thank you very much, Hagai, and especially for adhering to the time frame. And now I'm happy to call to Charlotte Metzger, whose background is in French philosophy, cultural studies, and ethnography, all of which have led her to speak about visibility of Muslims in Argentina.
Okay, can somebody help me about starting it? I don't speak Hebrew. Can you just... perfect. Thanks. Well, yeah, like this, it's okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very happy to speak about my subject, Unveiling Islam, Tactics of Visibility in Buenos Aires. First, after a small introduction, I will speak about the two old mosques in Buenos Aires and how they reflect social circumstances of Buenos Aires. And then I'm going to analyze what the new Wayfat Mosque tells us about evolutions in public space. And last, about the power of seeing in urban spaces. Muslims in Buenos Aires, what is that about? And above all, what are they doing there anyways? The subject of my master thesis, from which I would like to present some aspects to you today, is a niche topic that deals with a population group in Argentina that has received little attention so far. In my fieldwork, I was searching to answer the question, how can a religious minority gain more visibility in the public space of Buenos Aires? The current situation of the analysis of the Muslim community can reveal aspects about historical circumstances and the current situation of the country, of its politics and society. As part of my ethnographic research, I conducted numerous interviews and gained data mainly through participant observations. I formed the theoretical framework from urban ethnology and discourses around the issue of recognition, visibility, and public space. The writings of the French philosopher Henri Lefebvre are central to my considerations. Yeah, that's where we are. Since the question of religious affiliation is no longer asked in the Argentine census, there are no current figures on the size of Muslim community provided by the Argentine government. In 2009, the Pew Research Center cited Argentina as the country in South America with the largest number of Muslims, around 800,000, representing 1.9% of the total population. Representatives of Muslim communities usually quote a number between 450,000 and 700,000 believers across the country, and some even speak of over 1 million. The differentiating figures point to the striking difference between those who have only Muslim ancestors, those who call themselves Muslims but do not practice religion, and those who do practice. No matter how many Muslims actually live in Argentina, their numbers are not even rudimentarily represented in public sphere. On the streets, one very rarely sees believers who show their Islamic religious affiliation, for example, a woman wearing the hijab or a halal shop or a halal badja. There are 18 Muslim organizations nationwide registered and slightly more than 35 mosques and prayer rooms in the whole country. 3 of them are located in Buenos Aires. I am of course aware that religion is not written on people's foreheads. Nevertheless, the absence of the Muslim Argentinians in public space is striking, given the numbers just cited. 3 mosques in Buenos Aires do not represent the theoretically quite large Islamic community at all. Concerning this, a Muslim woman said to me, with luck, we'll reach 100,000. Why? Because I don't see them. Where are they? I don't know. What are they doing? I don't know. What do they think? Less. Do they care about Islam? I have no idea. When it comes to visibility, the most obvious approach is to look at what is either visible or can be visited. Therefore, we will first have a look at the 3 mosques in Buenos Aires. They can give some information about the integration of Muslims into the city. Here we can see the At-Tawhid Mosque, which was opened in 1983, and it is the oldest mosque in the city. It is the religious site of the Shiite community and is in close contact with the Islamic Republic of Iran, financially and ideologically. As you might notice, the mosque does not have a minaret, and there is hardly anything from outside that indicates a connection to Islam. Only this small sign here next to the bell and the books in the shop window, in the library window, give a small hint that it can be a mosque, that it is a mosque. This mosque fits perfectly into the streets of the low old houses. It radiates a form of normality that fits well into the modest neighborhood. These are pictures from the Al-Ahmad Mosque. This mosque is considered as the first mosque in Buenos Aires with typical Islamic Arab architecture, and it was opened 3 years later than the one you've seen before. It joins the Centro Islámico de la República Argentina, which is the biggest Islamic institution in Argentina, and it is of Sunni orientation. Here, too, the building of the mosque blends in inconspicuously with the street. Only the minaret overtowers the other houses. But even this Islamic sign is not very conspicuous, hidden behind trees and only visible if you put your head back into your neck. The Islamic architectural style, when one stands directly in front of the mosque, is quite recognizable, with the domed roof, the marble cladding, and the pointed windows, but always unobtrusive and not really colorful. These 2 mosques tell a story of integration and assimilation by being embedded in the urban context. Both were only built in the 1980s by the descendants of the first Muslim generation who came to Argentina from around 1880 on. People from the territories of today's Lebanon, Syria, and Palestine settled in Argentina. The Arab migrants were mostly Christians, but there were also a significant number of Muslims. They are considered to be well-integrated immigrants who have followed the Argentine concept of Argentinidad, of a white nation. Public religious development was never a priority for the Islamic community in the Christian country, and the practice of Islam was limited to the private sphere. In extreme cases of adaptation, one can even speak of a rejection of one's own root, and many cultural characteristics were lost in this process of assimilation. Some interviewees in my work speak of excuses they still use today if the topic is directed towards religion. When it comes to eating ham, for example, most people pretend to be allergic rather than having to explain their belief. Only in the 2nd and 3rd generation, when the Arab Muslim families in Argentina had already been integrated, a return to the origin and traditions of the family could take place. The 2 mosques bear witness to this process from the 1980s on. At the same time, the mosques show the aspect of private Islam and embody the quality of adapting and not standing out. Islam was lived in closed communities. That's why I speak of a private Islam. This habit of privatization can be characterized in parallel for the society and for the city. Muslim Argentinians present themselves in the public sphere mainly as Argentinians, and the streets of Buenos Aires are almost exclusively Argentinian. That means shaped by European influences, for example in the architecture. In between, the mosques with their inconspicuous appearance are hardly noticeable in public space, just like the believers themselves. They are not visible as Muslim places or as Muslim people. But there is the new mosque, and it tells us something about new evolutions in public space of Buenos Aires. Here you can see some pictures of the Centro Cultural Rey Fat, And already from a distance, this huge area of the cultural center can be seen. It occupies an entire block of the street and includes, beside the mosque, a school, a museum, and a sports field. The complex is located in Palermo. It's one of the wealthiest quarters of the capital. The two minarets rise far up into the sky and announce the mosque already from afar. The entrance is guarded by security, and a large fence borders the whole area. Already in these pictures, the big difference to the older mosques, is noticeable. They are integrated into the city, while Reifat stands out and is very visible. From the outside, the Reifat Mosque seems unapproachable, and during a visit, the building seemed cold and unused to me. Theoretically, it has room for 1,000 people, but in fact, the mosque is at best filled with 100 believers, and the school is so far only open for the lower classes. This conveys the impression that the greatest function of the cultural center is visibility. Reifat was opened in the year 2000 and can thus be understood as the turning point in the presence of Islam in Argentina, as well as the reason for an increased political interest in this religion. Already in the previous decades, Islam had come onto stage through unpleasant events. In 1992 and 1994, there were attacks on Jewish institutions, which were certainly perpetrated by Muslim terrorists. But when I speak of a new confrontation with Islam after 2000, I mean a more neutral discussion about this religion in Argentina. The mosque was initiated during the term of President Carlos Menem from 1989 to 1999, and he gave this popular and very expensive area to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, who built the mosque. This was strongly criticized not only by Argentinian politicians, but also by the Islamic community itself, which suspected in Reifat no religious institution, but a political purpose. One could say that the construction of the huge building had not been necessary for the Muslims of Buenos Aires because they already had some places for their belief. But Reifat embodies aspects that were not there before, especially political tendencies and visibility in social life and in the cityscape. Through the Reifat Cultural Center, a building of the Islamic religion is present in public space, and it attracts attention to the religion. The intensified confrontation with Islam is taking place within the framework of a fundamental change in the self-image of the Argentinian nation. During my field research, I could observe that the ideal of a homogeneous, white European nation is slowly broken up. For some years now, Argentina has been proudly referred to as a multicultural country, and the diversity of the 19th century immigrants is often highlighted, something that would have not been possible 50 years ago. The General Secretariat for Cultural Affairs is more and more focusing on interreligious dialogue. At the political level, there is an awareness for the diversity of the people. But I think that it is only a political effort that promotes the various communities in their traditions, languages, and religions. Concerning the interreligious dialogue, meetings and discussions between religious leaders and some academic conferences on the topic are organized. But I had the impression that these attempts remain stuck on the political elitist surface of social discourse and do not penetrate into the consciousness of normal citizens. The elements of presence in public space by and for Muslim groups only come from above, so they are initiated by institutions. The individual Muslim is, in my opinion, hardly present in the current society. As the actual public relations work does not lead to a contract between citizens of different ethnicities and religions, I speak in this context of a political public visibility, and this stands in contrast to a social public visibility, which would exist if the people in Buenos Aires were actually aware of the existence of Argentine Muslims. I think that the key aspect for a noticeable population diversity is individual action. By seeing the diversity and by experiencing it through individual direct contact and not through abstract theories and political debates, people get to know more about their multicultural environment. The hijab is the most visible medium to present Islam without words. It is an individual item of communication through which the woman directly interacts with the people and shows the existence of Islam. It is, to put it in the words of the sociologist Michel de Certeau, an art of the weak with its symbolic and immediate power. Such small attempts are tactics of the people, and they stand in contrast to large-scale strategies of the government. The micro-level tactics have a special value for dialogue in society because they are very everyday gestures and form a part of face-to-face interactions. By coming into the field of vision, Muslims become tangible as human beings. Research shows that passive contact, the simple seeing and hearing other people, is the most widespread social activity, and it is a very productive tool in the urban context, because there one is confronted with others all the time in public spaces. Seeing is the first step towards discovering the unknown and gathering new knowledge about your own society. Islam should not only be represented in buildings like the mosques, but also through people and lifestyles by visibly Muslim believers. They can act as human representatives or even ambassadors of their religion. Another citation. As soon as you can change two words with someone, there's a big opening. And in that sense, the exchange is very positive. I'm not saying that Argentines are ignorant. I'm simply saying that with respect to the community, there is a lack of knowledge and there is a great deal of misinformation. It is still not easy for Muslims in Argentina to deal openly with their Islamic faith and to present it proudly. There are many prejudices that refer especially to the Muslim man as a terrorist, and the Muslim woman as repressed. This is the dilemma of the current situation. On the one hand, Muslims want to be more open about their religion. On the other hand, the social context is not yet very appropriate for it. But in my conversations with members of the Al-Ahmad community, I have observed that great awareness of how important a presence in public space is in order to be recognized and acknowledged as both, as a part of the Muslim community and as a part of Argentine society. The Muslim women are aware of the effect of their hijab on others. Some mention to wear it more often, especially in everyday situations, to train their environment about their existence and to carry out their belief. For example, they wear the hijab when going to the vegetable shop on the corner to educate their neighborhood about their presence and to get used to curious glances and direct questions. In the informal contact in everyday life with neighbors and ignorant family, women see a possibility and a task within society to uncover and represent the Argentine diversity. Henri Lefebvre illustrates that people can change the essence of a city and its society by stepping into the public sphere. Everybody can shape the urban social space with presence and visibility. If the people on the street are visibly more mixed, then the public space becomes more diverse and consequently society becomes more tolerant, which then makes it easier for the supposed unknown to show themselves. In my opinion, this mutual transformation can also succeed in Buenos Aires. By taking Islam to the streets, the Muslims can change society. The hijab as the most visible religious object can become a meta symbol for Islam in Argentina in public space. Such immaterial contributions to social and urban space directly represent the multiculturalism of their homeland. According to Lefebvre's comments on the right to the city, people and their individual, theoretically small actions have the strongest influences on urban society. They can change a space in that way that everyone can participate in the public sphere and thus in society. The will exists and the possibilities in the new multicultural Buenos Aires are manifold. In the city, the moment of Muslim action has now arrived thanks to the interreligious dialogue, which in general helps to show foreignness. Small details in the city and society pave the way for a multicultural future in which Muslims also have a place in public. Let's take a look at an integral part of a modern society, infrastructure and public transport in particular. The yellow subway line and the naming of its stations is a good example for the constant transformation of the cityscape and the recognition of the Muslim minority. On this picture, you can see here the station Inclán, Mezquita Al-Ahmad, Inclán, Mosque of Al-Ahmad Mosque. And this second part of the name, Mosque Al-Ahmad, is a new addition. It was renamed only early in 2018 as part of an urban project that aims to highlight certain places or events and to make the subway stations an integral part of the surrounding community. The measure makes many of the members of Al-Ahmad very proud. And they consider the renaming as a recognition of their community and their presence as Muslim citizens in Buenos Aires. This example again refers to a material change in the cityscape, but the opinions of the young people bear witness to the fact that it also has a very personal value. Their reaction shows how far away they have been from actual integration into the society. They want a stronger presence, which is why the lettering is symbolically relevant. It generates attention to Islam. A transformation as small as this change of name can have a big impact on the self-image of the Muslims themselves, and it can also inform fellow citizens about their presence in the neighborhood. 2 voices concerning the renaming to end my presentation. It is good to have recognition of what the Al-Ahmad Mosque is, and more than anything that many people see it, because it is a very well-traversed line, and when they pass through, maybe they can approach, they can ask. Then it is a medium of diffusion. Because I feel that we belong to the city, that we are emerging. There was always the mosque, since more than 35 years, but for society it's like saying, it's there, we are here, we exist. Thank you.